Here's a question I'd like you to ask yourself. Have I been able to identify the childhood trauma in my life that's affecting my business and my success? Hey, it's Gary Coxe, and I have got some really interesting concepts for you today. You know, 90% of businesses fail. That's a huge amount. On the marriage aspect, 60% of marriages end up in divorce, and that is a huge number. I believe one of the biggest reasons for this is not just a lack of communication, but all of us have childhood trauma or some trauma in our past, and what happens, that transfers over into our business and relationships. It creates triggers, which is triggered not by ourselves, but by other people or other things. And if we don't know how to manage those triggers and also communicate with people with us that can support us in helping manage or smoothen out or soothe those triggers, it doesn't get any better. So today's video, I'm going to share with you how I'm going to be very vulnerable. I'm going to share with you some of my story, which you may already know, but I'm going to expose, if you will, some of the triggers that I've experienced, how it's dramatically cost me in my business, and what I do to change that. And the reason I want to share this with you is because I believe that you have triggers as well. There is no question about it. And because of these triggers, it affects your relationships. It affects your relationships at home if you have relationships at home. It affects your relationships with your staff if you have a team. There is no question about it. So what we have to do is figure out what these triggers are, and then we figure out where they came from. We don't necessarily have to know where they came from, but it's kind of helpful if we know that, though it's not something that's an absolute must to help us get to that next level. So let's head on over to the whiteboard and let's talk about some of this information. All right, first thing we're going to start off here is the word trauma. I want you to think about any trauma that you might have in your life. I just lost that. Okay, what trauma have you had in your life? Now, the reason I want you to think about that, I don't want you to bring it up where you're having to cry about it or it gets really painful, but I want you to know that because of that trauma, you have triggers. And these triggers are affecting you as an entrepreneur. So I'm going to share with you a couple of my things in my past, my traumas, then I'm going to share with you the triggers, and I'm going to share with you how it's prevented me from making millions more, right? And once I've identified these triggers and these patterns, I'm able to change them. The first is, and you may have heard my story before, my wife tells me my baby isn't mine. I was like, I don't know, 17 when this happened. We have a baby. Later on, she tells me it's not mine. Like, major pain. Then my father was murdered. That's just a whole new bunch of challenges. And even worse than all that, as crazy as it may sound, I was born and raised in a cult, and I left about 15 years ago. And when you leave that, your so-called friends and family are programmed to shun you and treat you as if you're dead for life. That creates a whole bunch of challenges in of itself. So with regards to this cult, all right, we're programmed to believe that hard times equals doing the right thing. The right thing. So, how do you know you're doing the right thing? You're constantly struggling and going through hard times. Well, I must have been always doing the right thing because I was always in emotional, physical, and mental pain because of all the trauma that I'd been through. But here's the problem with this. The problem with this is when I'm reflecting this into my business now and the triggers, okay? So the specific triggers I have, which I'll get to you in just a moment, but I've got this programming to believe that if I go through hard times consistently, I'm doing the right thing. Then I would always stretch, and sometimes it had some advantages, but I'm taking ridiculous risks, and it's causing massive amount of struggles in my life. And that's okay because I'm so programmed. My brain is so used to emotional pain. It is crazy. So then when I create a project in my company and I do hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and I start feeling, wow, this is nice. But I'm not feeling hard times. I'm feeling very comfortable. Oh, well, then you must not be doing the right thing. So subconsciously, I'll go create another project. Instead of being bored and rich, I go struggle and struggle to start something all over again. Not a good move. Now, what are the triggers? The triggers are I would easily give up. Now, I don't give up in my whole business as a whole because I've been doing this for 30 years, but I might take a project that's doing really well and I'll switch gears because I enjoy creating the project, but I don't want to see it through over a certain amount of X amount of dollars perhaps. It's not a specific number in my mind, but that's what happens. And then when things get really difficult, then I'll do something else to switch gears so I don't have to feel that pain anymore. Go switch to something else so it's easier until it gets really hard again. Kind of crazy. Can you relate though? Can you relate? So here's what happens in relationships. Just to give you an example. So here's a guy here. He's married and or dating, let's say, and here's the girl over here, and she's going to go out. She tells him that I'm going to go out and hang with my family for a couple hours. We're going to go do this and that. An hour later, he texts her, hey, where are you at? What you doing? She does not respond. Now, he's getting like a really kind of freaked out here, so he hits her up again, texts her again. She doesn't respond. He gets more texting to her and more and more and more, and it just starts blowing up into an argument. But now let's kind of decode things. Let's say this young man, when he was younger, his mom told him that when he was 2 or 3 years old, his dad left them. So now he feels hurt, he feels abandoned, he feels lonely, and she could have made it up, but let's say she didn't. Mama didn't make it up, but he bought that story, and that now gives him a feeling of being abandoned. And maybe as he gets older, he has a close friend or family member that dies. Oh, there's more abandonment. So now when he gets into a relationship, what happens is, once he gets into this relationship, he puts a text out. She doesn't respond. Now, she does not know about this trigger. She just thinks he's controlling and demanding. And let's say in the true sense of it, he's not, but he's responding to this trigger that makes him look this way. And because of that, what happens now is she does not know how to deal with that because they haven't communicated about it. And there's a way for her to maybe soften that or soothe that by trying to be responsive to him and say, hey, honey, I'm good. I'll be back in an hour, and making sure that after an hour, nothing happens, right? You know, she texts him again, we're on the way. And then he can work slowly on building that issue and trusting her more and not having that feeling of abandonment, because a lot of times when people feel abandoned, they're just so used to people leaving them, they don't even know how to handle somebody that wants to hang around and love them. Just something to think about. Now, this same person could have an issue in a business. This used to be one of my issues in business. So what would happen is when I would start again with the business and I would respond to somebody and I would text them and then they wouldn't text me back right away. It's like, you need to text me back. And I got to the point, whoa, that's a trigger. There's a reason I'm trying to text them all the time. It's not because I want to get a hold of them. Yes, that's what I feel that I want to do. And yes, there's something I need to get a hold of them about. But the real reason I'm doing it regularly and often is not because I need them and it's urgent, because if it was urgent, that's a different thing. But it's because I feel that person is not responding to me, so maybe there's something wrong, or they're going to leave me, or whatever it is. And I could go on and on and on. You must learn how to identify what your triggers are. If you can learn to identify them in your business, it will change the game. Here's one of the ways to start identifying them. When you start raising your voice and you start talking really fast and you start freaking out a little bit, that's probably a trigger. But somebody would say, well, wait a minute, the reason I'm pissed off is because so-and-so did this. Well, that's what triggered the trigger, but that's not the real reason you're pissed off. The real reason is because you feel abandoned. You feel that person no longer likes you. You feel that you can't trust that person, even though everybody else can, but you can't. See that? That's how that starts to overlay into your life from something that happened 10, 20, maybe 30 or more years ago. So one of the things that I do is anytime I feel emotional in my business, I'm upset about something, I feel I need to react right away, I stop and I ask myself, what is the real reason? What is the real reason you're responding this way? Somebody did something to me recently, and then it's been, I don't know how long ago, but I wanted to email them something. So I set the email up and I asked myself, what is the real reason? What's the real motive for sending them this email? Once I identified it, guess what I did? Cancel the email. It just didn't make any sense. It's a trigger. I'm responding to it. Now I'm in more control. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is you want to be able to make sure that you have emotional maturity and intelligence. And I'll wrap up with this. What do I mean by that? What I mean by this is what happens is people who have real big problems with just some of the things that we're talking about here, they only can look at things their way. You have to be able to understand there's alternate perspectives and viewpoints and perceptions on things, not just ours. And this is why I have about 3 or so advisors that I reach out to when something is happening. I feel that emotion. I figure out, okay, here's what I think I should do. And a lot of times the things that I think I should do are, unfortunately, I have to be careful. I'm not sure if it's based on this bull crap that I've been through all my life in the cult. So I reach out to them and I say, look, here's what's happening. Here's how I'm looking at it. How would you handle this? Or how would you look at this? I'm not looking for yes men. See, the people that I ask these questions to, that I get on the phone, they are not yes men. They'll tell me, Gary, that is just stupid, nonsense, crazy, makes no sense. Or they'll say, here's what it looks like, blah, blah, blah. Then I will think about both aspects, their viewpoint and my viewpoint. And often when I ask their viewpoint, I go like, I would have never thought of that. So when you're pissed off and you want to fire somebody, that's your viewpoint. There's somebody else that probably would not fire that person because they have a different viewpoint and they might have a different trigger and different trauma than you have. Very interesting. I will leave you at that. Hope you've enjoyed today's video. Love to see your comments below. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'd love to have you subscribe as well, being that we got hacked and we're kind of like starting all over again. Hey, we're out of here between now and the next time we get to chat. You know what to do. And if you don't, you will now. Don't let others rent space in your head. Have an awesome day.